I'm going to ask you to go to chat and see if you can come up to 10 things. Now, you may not be able to. Seth, I'm planning on you being able to do this. Come up with 10 things that you are drawn to do. 10 things that you're drawn to do. Just call your name. You can't figure out why, but you don't need to figure out why, because we're just saying, what are they? What are the things? I'm going to do this too. Welcome, Renee.
I'm a bit confused. 10 things drawn to do what?
That you're drawn to do. For instance, I'll give you some examples. One of mine is I'm drawn to learn how to use glass as the medium for a piece of art. I'm also drawn to learn how to weld. I'm going to join you guys with this. What are 10 things you're drawn to do? They could be interests, potential hobbies, things you're drawn to do. And I'm going to put mine as an example to give you some ideas. Anything is possible here. This is our warm-up. 10 things you're drawn to do. Ingrid, it's good to have you with us. Again. And those of you who are here live, present today, know that we have well over 650 people who request this webinar and listen to it after, or a bunch of them listen to it after, and we have the brave ones who come on live and do this with us. So Renee, wow. Renee, I see some of these already in action in your life. Right?
Yeah, sorry, I had to find the mute button. I've been using Teams all day, so now I have to switch to Zoom mode.
Yeah. Use the other animal here. Yeah, so how many of these do you think you already have engaged?
Let's see, gardening for sure. Interior design, yes. Animal care, yes. Cooking, hiking, sketching, yes. Connecting with people, yes. And Saturday, I've signed up for like intro to watercolor.
Beautiful. And you know, you inspired me. I did go out and purchase that very same drawing book.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it hasn't come yet, but I did go get it. So I'm following
you. It's fun.
Okay, here we go. We've got Shannon. These are not surprising to me at all. Stas. Ooh, okay. We share one there.
We do. That's weird, isn't it? Welding.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have to show each other projects when we get them finished in the future. Gardening, cooking, DIY, Jaimi. Yes, that graphic novel. I just can't wait for it. Yep. More yoga, the greenhouse. Beautiful, Stas. Yeah, added some more. And I don't know if Seth's put his on here yet. I haven't seen it yet. Jackie's interested in more yoga and dogs, golf. Yes, love it, love it, love. Yes, we've got some good things happening here. While you're putting those of you who haven't published yet, let me just share a little bit about how come I'm asking you to do this. When we want a successful transition in our career reinvention, which is why we're all here today, we have to take some risks and we have to explore possible selves. The idea is, and I think it was first brought up by Hermione Ibarra in her book, Working Identity, Unconventional Strategies, that we're not just one individual in our own skin. We have many different identities that we could put to play in our careers. So we have to experiment with options. We have to let options appear. We have to make experiments happen. And we need to go against conventional wisdom and even do things that are just, we're drawn to them. And I'll give you an example of that. And I'm going to first look at Lisa's and Seth's. Soccer, cats, otters, teen fiction, writing it. Wow. Among Pleasant People, coaching. Glad you're interested in that, Lisa. Seth, connect with people, swim, bike. Yes, some of the things we know just light you up. Solving problems, reading, traveling. You're always interested in people. These are lovely things. So here's the example. We all know Steve Jobs, and he was famous for saying, moving forward, you can't connect the dots. It's got to connect the dots when you look backward. Well, one of the reasons he was mentioning that was there was a period of time in his life when all he knew he wanted to do was just grow and learn. This was before the Apple era. He just wanted to grow and learn. So he took a variety of college classes. One was calligraphy. Now, you could look at Apple and say, well, how did that have any implications on millions and millions and millions of computers and Apple products being sold? Well, it did have some influence on Steve Jobs, because when the Apple computer came out, it was the first computer to offer choices of fonts. And that was strongly influenced by Steve Jobs' little stint in taking calligraphy. So when you're in the reinvention mode, one of the things you want to follow are hunches and nudges, things you want to try. It's not a waste of time. Everything that you input from those experiences can be relied on to support you later, and to be an aspect or a feature or an attribute that you pull out of your toolkit and you use somewhere along the way in a new and reinvented identity. So I hope that's useful. So everything that you've listed here, keep the things you've listed in mind as we talk to Jaimi. So Jaimi, I'm going to have you come off mute. Jaimi has been on a career reinvention journey. She's been up to her neck in experimenting, exploring possible selves. It's been a meandering, and the last time we met, everything she was talking about was encompassing this topic. And I was like, Jaimi, please speak to our group. This is one of the more important concepts to transfer over to people who want some support with reinvention. So Jaimi, where do you want to start with your story, or where do you want to start with that discussion that we had that I asked, please transfer that into today's call?
Well, I have a PowerPoint.
Yes. Okay, let's make sure she can share it.
And I promise it's only pictures. It's not words. It's just pictures.
It's whatever you give us, we're gonna love.
And so, yeah, I'll just, and please like take yourself off mute. It's a small group. Like I'll try to watch the chat, but if you have questions, just jump in.
Yeah, and Shannon and I will watch the chat too. Yeah. So are you able to share yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I come from this beautiful place on our planet. It's kind of hard to tell state lines and political boundaries, but there's this beautiful pink and green lake that can be seen. This is from the International Space Station. And I come from very near Great Salt Lake in the state of Utah. And I wanted you to see this from there. This is what I looked like when I met Great Salt Lake. I was probably like 8 or 10 years old. And I not only had a mullet, but I had a perm at the same time, which is really fun and kind of like shows you my Utah heritage here. I also have to point out, I love this picture because you can see these are like bunny ears. And I thought this t-shirt was so racy because it said "sun your buns," and the little bunny rabbits were like mooning you with their little like white bums. Anyway, I always love that picture. And I grew up like this in this place where this major landmark and environment and huge place in my world was a big disappointment, and it was icky and ugly and stinky and all of the bad things that you don't want to go to. And then I accidentally started working at the lake. And this is a picture of me. My first job was with people who harvest brine shrimp from Great Salt Lake. So these cysts of brine shrimp are harvested and they're dried and they're sent all around the world and used as fish food, as feed for other fish like prawns. So you're kind of indirectly eating Great Salt Lake like 40 to 60% of the time that you eat marine farmed fish. And I learned about this crazy lake, this huge place that's like 25 miles long by 25 miles wide by like 50 miles long, depending on what's going on, from these folks that were spending winters out on the lake, and that were kind of considered like the Wild West with all of these. It was a very male dominated brine shrimp harvest that was like out on the lake. I moved to working with college students. I started working at a small liberal arts college in Salt Lake called Westminster College. And for 15 years, I co-created Great Salt Lake Institute and worked with many college students, impacting them, for their career. It was really cool, and also did lots for the lake, through these students. I put this picture in. I thought this was really funny because one year I pulled this stunt and I raised like $8,000, and I told people I would get a mullet if I raised this money. And it just happened that on April Fool's Day was when we were like announcing if we won or not. And so I bought these like mullet wigs that my students are wearing. These students are now like out in the field, and we just had a blast with it. This, you'll see I have a mask on, and this was like during the pandemic, which was a really weird time for college students and people working in science labs. So I think that was, a pretty big factor in kind of the change in my career. And while I was at Westminster and working at Great Salt Lake through the past 25 years, I did a lot of really cool science. We put motion activated cameras on this island with pelicans. It's one of the largest breeding grounds for pelicans. And you'll notice here in the background, this is a land bridge. So water levels have gotten so low at Great Salt Lake because we're not letting water get into the lake, that there was this land bridge and coyotes and humans were coming out. So we put these motion activated cameras on this protected, super remote island. I can't even tell you how hard it is to get to, and you have to work with the state wildlife folks to get out there. And we were able to push along, getting these cameras out and telling us these really important things about these pelicans at this imperiled lake that I have grown up with and that I really love. The pelicans are just hilarious. Like in A, you can see like they have dance parties, and in B, they really like to take selfies, which is really gross because he has yucky stuff in his mouth. Anyway, we just learned a lot of really cool stuff during the time that I worked, and kind of in connection with all of the folks my network that I had worked with before. And we did document lots of impacts on this island that just coincidentally, just this year, these pelicans disappeared off of this island that's a major breeding ground. And this has never happened before. And all of this is like caught on these motion activated cameras that we wouldn't have seen. Nobody can go out to this island. And I did a ton of outreach during that time because it felt like nobody was really like paying attention to the lake, and that we were coming on this really dire time for this major metropolitan area of Salt Lake and the surrounding area with 2.5 million people, and this lake that is drying and kicking up toxic dust, and wildlife is dying. And I mean, there's, less lake effect snow. I could go on and on about all of these. And so I did a lot of outreach. One of this was from an obituary for Great Salt Lake that I co-wrote with Dr. Bonnie Baxter that I worked with at Westminster. And this obituary got a lot of attention because it was written as if this lake had died. We kind of looked into the future. I co-edited a book called Great Salt Lake Biology, A Terminal Lake in a Time of Change. This was really important. Nobody had ever written a book dedicated just to the biology of lake, especially during this, really important time of change for an entire region. And so I also wrote a kid's book. It's harder to write than a 16-chapter academic book, and wrote a book called The Great Salt Lake Monster Mystery that is meant for kids. And I had to introduce them to my farm. So during this whole time, I had this really successful career and was very satisfied with the work that I was doing and changing perceptions of Utah and Great Salt Lake, and even what being a scientist, being an environmentalist was. And it was good. We, in the last 2 years, I'm sure most of you have heard things about Great Salt Lake. The word got out, not just because of me, but because of lots of people working together. But there's lots of people that are worried about this. And so during this time, like I'm watching the lake get really popular. People are starting to understand that this is like really not just a stinky, buggy lake that's going to die. It's going to impact all of the humans, right? And we saw last year, like you'll see in this line, this like dotted line, kind of talks about the health and where Great Salt Lake is. And you can see like in the green, green is kind of where we want to be. That's where things are healthy, the shrimp and the birds and the industries. And the, current lake level is kind of, to the left of that. It's not ideal. And then last year we saw these lake levels go so low that our lake was like really dying. Like it was not just like the sky is falling from a hysterical conservation, environmental hippie, drumbeat and hippie. And during this time, I moved to my family farm, and about 2 months in, we were living in a 30-foot trailer behind this big rock house. And it had just been a few months. We were living in this trailer, and I was like, this is going to fuck me up. Excuse my French. This is really going to like fuck me up. And so that's when I found Lynn and Soul Salt and started working with her then. And I have been doing I was able to quit my job, and I've been able to embrace life on the farm. I have this awesome back patio, and I get to snuggle baby goats now. I started co-oping at my neighbor's farm, which is way better than having your own like farm with live animals, because I can be like the crazy goat aunt and take off when I'm done snuggling the babies. And I help harvest, vegetables, and I help with their CSA and earn our vegetables and learn how to grow food and learn what farming is all about. This is my friend. I think it's in really bad taste. The farmer that I work with calls this sheep girlfriend, which I think is in such bad good taste. But girlfriend is one of my favorite sheep. She's actually a sheep. Sheep aren't as friendly as goats. And so I'm stoked to be in a selfie with her. And I was like, there's so much Great Salt Lake going on, and I can like listen to all of these meetings, but I put some limits on that. I wasn't going to be driving. Lots of these meetings are held an hour and a half or 2 hours away from me. And so I stopped going, driving into the city, and I would listen to these meetings. But I was sitting at my home and decided to learn how to do things like pickling. So I pickle a lot. This year got Great Salt Lake water, and I pickled it. That's like how much my nerdiness extends into kind of like bridges my lives. During this time, I helped kids get brine shrimp designated as Utah State Crustacean. This was no small feat. You would be surprised that some legislators actually are very opposed to like brine shrimp and state crustaceans.
Sorry.
And I know. One of our legislators, we call him the state curmudgeon now. Yeah. And like I was like feeling kind of down. I felt like all of this work that I was doing, I was frustrated, and I had all of this time, and I had this brine shrimp hand puppet that somebody had given me, and I started being a puppeteer. So I'm going to play this for you, Sandy the brine shrimp.
What the Utah legislature back in session always gives me indigestion. They talk about saving the lake, but not much happens. It feels kind of big. Tongues are wagging, bullshit's flying. Meanwhile, another microbial life's dying. Millions of people breathe toxic dust. Rich people get tax cut. A pipe from the ocean? You're kidding. The ecosystem's clock is ticking. Well, the drought is real. Things are dire. Climate's changing. Forest on fire, but there still is hope. Nature recovers if we can help each other. The brine tripper dying, flies ain't flying, gulls are crying, and we are trying to send a message. Will you listen? The Great Salt Lake are inland sea, so much taller than it used to be, and it's on its way to empty. Unless we act more rapidly. Well, Great Salt Lake are inland sea, so much taller than it used to be, and it's on its way to empty. Unless we act more rapidly.
That was my, that's like the first puppeteering I've done. So,
Very good.
oh, there we go. And, you know, recently I've really turned to some other birds. I've done a lot of pelicans. I've connected people to pelicans, definitely to brine shrimp. And then I've started working with a group trying to like link humans and birds along the entire flyway for birds from like Canada to Argentina. And so I guess I would say I'm still in a neutral zone, right? Like I kind of thought that I would have this like epiphany and be like, oh, I'm going to be a farmer when I grow up. Or I thought I would have this thing and I haven't. I think I'm a long-termer. Lynn's going to have to deal with me for a while. But I have a few things that I'm kind of like setting my eyes on. Like one is the idea of these sister saline lakes. I'm looking to create a Great Salt Lake education coordinator. There's not anything like that. That will then like expand into this more flyway connection of people, not just through education and birds, but people who manage land, people who legislate, you know, who make our laws, all of that. I really, really, really want to write a graphic novel about Great Salt Lake and the stories that I have from the lake. I have just lots of experience that nobody has had, like nobody has like the experiences of being on the lake. Very few people. I have like so many stories of 25 years of not just mine, of other people's that would fit really great in a graphic novel. And I feel like this graphic novel is kind of that last, like, it would be like the kind of like icing on the cake of like the messages and way that I've worked with Great Salt Lake to kind of put it into kind of something edgy and something really fun. And recently we've started thinking about this rock house and this like iconic structure that's on the farm that I live on is a homestead of my husband's family. There's been 7 generations of folks that have lived here. And so starting to like think about this like iconic rock house and what to do with that rock house. And I feel like all of these things are kind of these like melding of these like two worlds of like this like Great Salt Lake world that I live in and this farm world that I live in. And this farm world actually has a lot to do with Great Salt Lake, that a lot of folks are diverting water out of the major tributaries to do agriculture. And so I think there's kind of this like melding of all of these things, but I still don't know what I'm up to, right? I'm still kind of like doing these experiments and seeing where they lead me. And so that's what I have, because I would rather you have pretty pictures to listen to than just me. And that's my email if you need it. And so I guess, you know, if anybody has ideas about old homes or graphic novels, and I've never written a graphic novel, I don't know what to do about them. Or, you know, thinking about out of the box places for where to house like this crazy idea about hemispheric connections of birds and people and wetlands.
So Jaimi, let's do something really quick. Seth has a question for you. We're going to go to that in just a moment. You've put your ask out there, so let's reiterate your ask. You're looking for anybody, and I know I'm going to connect you with my son with graphic novels. So if anybody has other connections with that.
Or can I say one other thing about that? a graphic novel came out because I think graphic novels are like kind of gritty. There's lots of pictures and like very few words. But if you geniuses have like other ideas of how to put kind of like gritty stories into places with pictures or anything, I'm still that idea.
A play or a musical.
Well, and see, this is the thing is Great Salt Lake is getting very saturated. Like people are so interested and there's tons of art and there's now a play about it and there's a puppet show. There's a bunch of that going on.
Okay. So
Is
what's not happening is the graphic artist or art.
What's that?
So one of the reasons you're looking at graphic art is because it's unique to what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
And I think the genre is edgy, you know, like it's edgy and you can talk about Brian Shrimp having two penises and people don't clutch their pearls, you know, you can joke about it.
yeah, we can get into that with a graphic novel. So Jaimi, one of the things I want us to do is just pull back. Seth, hang on to that question because I think it will be good to insert it after this answer. You've shown us by picture and story some of the things that you've been involved in. Because when we met, you were looking at leaving the university, leaving Westminster, and getting out and doing something that had more purpose and more meaning for you. And so let's talk about the things you've done. You've gone and participated with the goat farm, and you're helping them get food for the goats. So kind of list it linear, maybe 12 things that you've done that are separate from the work at the university that have helped get you to where you are today.
Well, definitely connecting with the folks at the farm. I talk about the goats a lot, but because the goats are really cute and they have these soft little like muzzles and they're just adorable. But the people that I met at the farm were probably more important than the goats. Like meeting friends when I came out here and folks that are kind of doing fun stuff. And so that well, I'm drawing a blank now, Lynn.
Okay, so let's talk about, so you started the puppet show.
Oh, I did start the puppet show. I would be sitting here in my kitchen and I'd be like, dang, I mean, I've been pretty adamant about like not driving and for the first year not taking any Great Salt Lake work. Like I really like put some like hard sideboards on like this is my year. I have this like really wonderful opportunity to where I don't have to work. I don't have to like make money. And so but then I'd be sitting at my kitchen and I'd be like, what am I going to do? My kid went to school. Like, what am I going to do? And I started watching Sesame Street and talked to my friend who was a puppeteer. And so I learned the puppeteering.
You also recently went down to California.
Yeah, we made a greenhouse. I'll have a greenhouse to like grow my own things next year. I still am on like lots of boards and was invited to go through Sageland Collaborative is a group that does science and service of wildlife and wildlands. And I'm their board chair. So they invited me to go to Mono Lake and like meet with a delegation of folks from the Flyway from Canada. We had folks from Mono Lake in California, Canada, Argentina, and Utah to kind of like make all of those in-person connections.
Yeah, the pickling was even an
the pickling. The pickling is like such a nerdy thing, but now I have Christmas presents to give everybody that I don't have to buy them. You know, pickling and making bread and things like that you know my family eats. Yeah.
So I'm looking at all the things that we put of things that draw you out, you want to try them, that we all put into the chat. Jaimi has made this big scale. Like she's gone out and discovered what's something I want to try, what's something I want to experiment, who's somebody I want to meet, what's a group I want to be part of. This is why we asked her to be here today, is she has a variety of things that she's tried, and that some of them have been very divergent from others, and none of them, I promise, are going to be wasted when she finally lands on where she's going. But she's in process. You're seeing she's in process. When you're in process like Jaimi is, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do next as a permanent job, you take your time and you experiment your way through it with a variety of things that you're drawn to or that come just kind of drop in your lap. Would you agree with that, Jaimi?
I'm very opportunistic.
Yes.
I like, yeah.
So Seth, this is a good time to take your question. Tee it up for us. And thanks
Yeah,
for
so
listening.
yeah, no worries.
I have to say too, Seth and I are good friends. We met like 100 years ago when I was dating his friend, and we've just keep like overlapping, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I couldn't not come to this. So my question, because I'm on as well, you and Lynn know I'm on a similar path at the moment, and so my question for you is how you feel about some of the things you're doing that are brand new to you versus the things that you could do with your eyes closed. So for example, I think you can do a lot of the sitting on a board and contributing as a science expert on the Great Salt Lake. You can kind of do that with your eyes closed versus learning some task on the farm that's something you've never done. How do you feel when you're doing one versus the other? Do you like to do both? That's really my question.
I think something that I really, really, really love to do is talk to people and listen to people and like interact with people. And the things that I do with Great Salt Lake involve all of those things. And I've been really lucky to quit my job. And what that means is like, I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. And so like those things that I don't want to do anymore, like budgeting and like writing grants and like kind of those making websites, like those back end of things that I really, really hated to do. And I associate with Great Salt Lake because that's all I've ever done for my job. Like I've been able to like not do those things. And so the work that I'm doing with Great Salt Lake now, I find great satisfaction in it because I have like the network and people trust me and they respect me. And so I can do that very effectively, but I don't want to do it all the time because I get like jazzed up thinking about like the rock house and like talking to like state history and like researching like the rock house. Like I can't even tell you how many rabbit holes I've gone down on this like rock house, like from like Scottish architecture to like rock houses in northern Utah. So I guess that was a long answer to say that I'm working to support like these other things and making money by doing Great Salt Lake work through like environmental consulting, where I can just like pick up projects that mean a lot to me, that pay the bills, and that I like to do, that I'm not having to do like big budgets and the like those kinds of things. Just really the things I like to do and the things that I'm good at.
How do you deal with the discomfort as a follow-up? How do you deal with the discomfort of things that, man, you have a lot to learn, like, oh shit, like I don't really know what I'm talking about, because you know a lot of what you're talking about when you're talking about Salt Lake, but maybe not so much how to do something with a goat. I don't know.
I learned how to eviscerate a goat, and that was very uncomfortable because I don't know what I'm doing, and I honestly don't really like to eat a lot of meat. My family eats meat, and well, we all eat meat, but it was this thing where I was like, well, like I should help my friends, right? Like my friends are doing this big job and I can learn how to do it and kind of, I guess, I mean, at the time I was like, decide if I want my own goats. And it was like very uncomfortable. And I have like there, it's almost like there's two Jaimis. There's the like learning Jaimi at the farm that everybody has to like tell me how to do everything and draw me pictures. And I just have to like be okay with not knowing and just do what they say. And then there's kind of this Great Salt Lake I have more authority over and more, yeah.
Yeah. Do you, one of the things that's occurring to me, Jaimi, as I get to see the rock house, because we haven't talked a lot about it. When you first started the presentation and you thought about going to the farm and you used the F word and you used it deliberately, it was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm done. Like, this is not going to help me reinvent. I'm stuck. And yet, as you talk and as the story unfolds, it's as if a new dimension of you gets reinvented or awakened when you dive into other aspects that are either related to the farm, near the farm, or on the farm. Like, I wonder if one of the strategies that you're using that I want to share with everyone today is surrender to what's showing up. Like you were just saying, being an opportunist, surrender to what is showing up, because sometimes the thing that will lead you to the next step is not something that you instigate. It comes to you like the stone house, and it can open up a whole channel of new opportunities or people or thoughts or mindsets or personal identities. And so go ahead, Jaimi.
Well, one thing that during that year when when we first moved up here, and I guess during the last 2 years, I had this thing where if anybody asked me to do something, I would go and do it with them. Like if it was like in my little valley that was within, 20 miles or so, I would do it. Like, I've been to a Mormon church to go to like water talks. I wish I could even remember all of the things I've done.
You helped it with the boat rentals?
Oh yeah, the boat rent. There was a little while I was going to be a manager of a boat shop. I mean, there's like anytime anybody asked me, I would at least try it with a very firm, I don't know if I would want to keep doing this.
Yeah. And to your point, this is what we call experimenting. Jaimi is a scientist, so she's experimenting, and that's what we all have to be, is we all have to use a scientific method of figuring out who we are when we do something. Do we like it? Does it lead to something else? Do we not like it? Can we check it off the list and take it out of possibilities? Experimentation is the biggest way we learn in our way forward in career reinvention, because as adults, we still learn in the same methodology we did as children. We don't learn with our big brains that are adult brains. We learn by the experiences that flow through our body, our mind, our heart, our gut, our experiences. That's how we learn as adults. And so experiments using a scientific method of hypothesis, would this thing be fun? Not fun. Let me try it. Everything that you put down that you were drawn to could become an experiment. Going out and trying it, noticing, who am I when I do it? Who do I learn about? What new people do I get to see and hear and connect to? What's the next thing that this suggests? You experiment your way toward the new reinvention. So, do we have other questions for Jaimi? Or Jaimi, do you have other things you want to share? Because we're getting close to our close-up time. Okay. Yeah, that's great, Seth. Interactive and agile. You have to use those as approaches, because what we're really trying to get you to do is to embody the change as the change is happening. So if you're doing the experiments, you're embodying the transition. And it is an iterative cycle of experiment after experiment after experiment. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Lynn, I was going to say, if I can jump in. Jaimi, I just wanted to say you sound super cool. And I'm so impressed by everything you've done. It's amazing. And I'm a lot jealous that you have a rock house and a farm. But that's okay. I won't try to turn green. But yeah, I was just wondering, it's like, do you ever find yourself impatient kind of to be like at the end, or like to have it all figured out, or like mostly figured out? Or if you've just kind of been really great at just sort of like not getting overwhelmed or impatient, and then if you do, how have you kind of addressed that or dealt with that?
I think my husband is a little bit more impatient than I am. He's, at some point I'm going to have to bring in money. We're going to have to buy the farm, from the family. And so I think there's a little bit of a, he's a little bit more impatient than I am. But I don't think I have. Do you think I have been, Lynn? I mean, I've been like down a few times and like, what in the world am I doing? But I have an opportunity where I don't have to worry about a mortgage, right? Like so many of those things that people work for, I don't have, I don't have to do that right away. And so I can kind of like take my time. And I don't think I've been very impatient.
No, I think you've been extremely patient. I think you've actually given yourself the time and space so that you could see more things, which means that your reinvention has opened up broadly.
But it means you have to let go.
Say
Like,
say more about
like,
that.
like you have to let go, and you have to know that it's like going to be messy. It's not going to be like a perfect process.
Yeah.
And like for me, being the opportunist that I am, that I'm just patiently waiting for other like opportunities that are going to kind of like fit those puzzle pieces that are already there. Um, and I think I have a very different style than a lot of folks I know, right? Like there's like this path and I'm gonna like get here. And I've had an opportunity to not do that and to find the opportunity and change. I like change. I like actually.
I think
That's
you
great.
have
Thanks so much.
been, yeah, I think you have been patient. And for all of you who are feeling impatient, this is a really good time. If you're working with me, to reach out, let me know so we can go through some more strategies. However, if you're not working with me, you can search through YouTube and find lots of great information on how to surrender. We also, and Shannon, I'm going to ask you to post this. We also have a video about you on change, and we mimic William Bridges' transition model out on our YouTube, and Shannon's going to put it in our chat so you can just click on it. There are things to remember when you're in the ambiguous zone of not being to that reinvented place yet. And there are 5 strategies embedded in that video of things to do in the in-between. And face it, it doesn't matter if we're waiting for Christmas to come or Hanukkah to come or summer to come. It doesn't matter if we're waiting for that garden to grow so we can harvest. There are times when things are in transition where we cannot force them to go any faster. And so we have to find ways to manage ourselves through the ambiguous zone of not knowing what's going to happen at the end of the story, and just trusting that if we daily do our part and sort of surrender to the process, and surrender is a big thing, we surrender to the process, we find our way there. And Seth, you're right, you have to separate your identity from your current job. Renee, patience is tough, especially when money's not coming in. And Jackie, yes, it's easy to fall back on what you've done. And it's also, that's why we bring up the strategy of having a bridge job. So Jaimi's done a lot of bridge jobs where she's earned some money, a little bit here, a little bit there, the consulting, so that you can keep the money flowing while you're trying to figure out what's going to fill up the big space in your life called my next career I'm going to stick with.
You know what the hardest part for me was? It's kind of a little part, but I don't have a title. I'm not the coordinator of Great Salt Lake Institute at Westminster College. And then I was in this place where I could make up my title. So for a while I called myself a feral mom, or a feral biologist, or that, and that I didn't have a title. And when people would say, well, what are you doing? I didn't know how to say, I don't know. I don't know. And I wish I would have had those words, because I had never not known what I was going to do. And so it took me 2 years to say, I don't know. I don't need to know.
And once you can do that, you free yourself. It's almost as if you release yourself from the past. And it scares people when they hear you say that, because they're uncomfortable that you don't know. And they would be uncomfortable if they didn't know what they're doing. And so when we're reinventing, recognize too that we make the people around us extremely uncomfortable by being willing to put ourselves out there and change. Jaimi, any other words of wisdom or any other questions or comments you want to make about what Jaimi said today? This has been such a brilliant exchange of ideas. Yeah. And we're really glad you're with us today. This is the gathering space here in Salt Lake, where we hope that you will return often to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself in the story of reinvention and not abort. Because if you stop early, you have to go back and kind of regain ground. So keep going, even if it's slow, laborious, and you're unclear like Jaimi. You keep going and you keep finding what's the next thing. What's the next stone house? Where's the next goat to feed? Where's the next Great Salt Lake contract? Whatever you're doing, make sure to keep going. Don't stop until you know you've really arrived. I don't see any other questions coming up.
I
Jaimi?
learned how to weld too. There was talk about welding.
Yes, Jaimi,
How to weld.
I'm gonna pick your brain because there are a couple of things I want to make, and maybe Stas and I, even though we're, I think, geographically in separate places, we can compare notes when we learn how to do it.
That's one thing that I haven't conquered my fear of, is like actually like taking out like I did it at the technology center, but I haven't like taken it out to my backyard yet. So
There's a lot of equipment and a lot of things to know about it so that you don't harm yourself or anyone else. Thank you, everybody who's been here today. Please, again, feel free to join us next month. Thank you, Jaimi, for being our guest and being so gracious and so clever in your presentation. Good to see you guys again. Lisa, it's great to see you. Renee, Seth, nice to meet you today, Stas.
Yeah,
Ingrid and
okay.
Jackie, thank you for being here. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.